$87,000 cash gone. That's what Garrett Hayes thought when he pulled up to his newly purchased mountain cabin and saw a stranger's SUV in his driveway. But it got worse. The woman on the porch, blonde, furious, and yes, holding a shotgun, screamed at him, "Get off my property before I call the cops." The smell of fresh paint he never authorized mixed with someone else's dinner cooking inside his house. Her curtains hung in his windows. Garrett had the deed in his hand. She had possession, and the sheriff who showed up 20 minutes later, he sided with her. "This is a civil matter," the cops said. "Y'all need to take it to court. Garrett just got robbed in broad daylight, and the law helped the thieves. What would you do if squatters claimed your own house?" Drop a comment with where you're watching from, because this legal nightmare gets way worse before it gets better. Meet Garrett Hayes, 52, retired union electrician from Pittsburgh. The kind of guy who spent 30 years climbing utility poles in February snowstorms because the overtime paid double. 3 years ago, his wife Helen lost her fight with cancer. The kind that doesn't just kill you. It bankrupts you first, then kills you anyway. But before she died, she grabbed his hand and said, "Go live your dream, baby. Don't just exist." So Garrett started looking. He found it on a foreclosure auction site at 2 a.m, a 1970s A-frame cabin on 40 acres of West Virginia Ridge. The photos showed peeling wood siding, a stone chimney, and forest views that made his chest ache. $87,000. The listing promised clear title, bank-owned foreclosure, sold as is. Garrett hired a remote inspector, paid $300 for a title search. Came back spotless. No liens, no claims, no ghosts. He wired the money. Life insurance from Helen plus 3 decades of overtime. Closed remotely because Charleston was 4 hours away anyway. The drive from Pittsburgh took 5 hours through mountain switchbacks. Garrett brought Dez, his contractor buddy. Arms like suspension cables, could frame a house blindfolded. They packed Garrett's F-150 with tools and industrial cleaning supplies. That Tulane blacktop wound through God's country, pine smell so thick you could taste it. Garrett cracked the window. Cold November air bit his face, but damn, it felt alive. "First time seeing it in person, right?" Dez asked. "Yeah." Garrett's hands were slick on the wheel. GPS led them up a gravel road that rattled his fillings loose. Around the last bend there, his A-frame, exactly like the photos, except 3 vehicles clogged the driveway. New Chevy Tahoe, contractor truck with logos, and a Camry. Smoke drifted from his chimney. Garrett." Dez pointed like he'd seen a UFO. "Someone's here." The front door exploded open. A woman charged out. Early 50s. Blonde hair shellacked into submission. Makeup thick enough to spackling. Yoga pants that screamed, "I need to speak to a manager." She was vibrating with rage. "This is private property. You're trespassing." Garrett killed the engine, grabbed his deed folder, stepped out onto gravel that crunched like broken teeth under his boots. "Ma'am, there's been a mistake. I own." "That's fake." She stabbed a finger at his papers. "This house belongs to my family. My great-uncle built this place." A man lumbered out behind her. 50s, gut testing his camo hoodie's durability. Carhartt boots crusted with red clay. "You got scammed, buddy. That auction was fraudulent. We're reclaiming our property." Garrett's pulse hammered in his ears. "I have the deed, title insurance, bank documents." "County records are wrong," she hissed. "We've been paying taxes." The man whipped out his phone. "Calling Sheriff Hooper. He'll handle this." Garrett saw it then. Curtains in the windows, kids' scooters on the porch, propane grill on the deck, the smell of pot roast drifting out the door, someone else's dinner cooking in his kitchen. They weren't visiting. They were living here. Dez muttered, "We need a lawyer now." 20 minutes later, sheriff's cruiser pulled up. Deputy climbing out, late 40s, mustache like a push broom, uniform buttons screaming for mercy. He clasped hands with the husband like they shared a fantasy football league. "Wade, appreciate you coming," the man said. Sheriff Hooper barely glanced at Garrett's deed, listened to both sides with the enthusiasm of a man picking jury duty. Then, civil matter, folks. Both claiming ownership. Court's got to sort it. Till then, nobody's. Evicting nobody. The blonde, Pamela Sutherland. He'd learn, smiled, teeth white as sheeklets. "Possession's 9/10 of the law, sweetheart." The sheriff left. Garrett stood in his own driveway, holding proof of ownership, watching strangers live in his house. He'd been robbed in broad daylight. and the law had just driven away. Garrett sat in his truck at the bottom of the mountain, hands shaking so hard he couldn't get the key in the ignition. Des just stared out the windshield like he'd witnessed a murder. What the hell just happened? Des finally said. I got robbed, Garrett said, and the sheriff helped them do it. They found a roadside motel 10 miles down the highway, the kind with a buzzing neon vacancy sign. The room smelled like mildew and someone else's mistakes. Garrett couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., he was on his laptop, diving into West Virginia property law like a man possessed. That's when he found it. Pamela Sutherland wasn't just some random squatter. She was the top-selling real estate agent in the county. Her face smiled from a dozen sold signs on her agency website. She'd know that property was in foreclosure. She had to. Day 2, Garrett got an email that made his blood pressure spike. Cease and desist letter from some slick Charleston law firm. Pamela's lawyers claimed his purchase was defective title, demanded he relinquish his claim or face a harassment lawsuit, and they made sure to mention Randall's position as county building inspector. The threat was clear as glass. Fight us, and we'll make your life hell through official channels. Garrett drove into town and found Beverly Frost. Late 60s, semi-retired attorney working from a home office that looked like a library exploded. Case files stacked on every surface, coffee mugs growing ecosystems. But her eyes were sharp as razor wire. Honey, she said after reviewing his documents. You've got ironclad ownership. Problem is, Pamela's playing the long game. She knows the judges. She's betting you'll give up and go back to Pittsburgh. Beverly filed an emergency eviction motion. Court date 6 weeks out. Rural docket backlog. The wheels of justice turn slow when you're not local. One more thing, Beverly warned. Randall inspects half the new construction in this county. He's got favors stacked up like firewood. Watch yourself. Garrett couldn't help it. 3 days later, he drove past the property just to see. That's when he spotted Randall's construction crew pouring concrete for an addition on the back of the house. They were improving his property, creating a sweat equity argument. Look, Your Honor, we invested $20,000 in improvements. Surely that counts for something. Garrett filmed it on his phone, hands trembling with rage, and sent it to Beverly. They're ballsy, she said. That's illegal construction on disputed property, but filing a stop work order shows our hand. Let them dig their hole deeper. The financial hit came next. Garrett's bank called. Anonymous complaint filed, claiming Garrett used fraudulent documents to purchase the West Virginia property. Pending investigation, they were freezing his credit line. $30,000 he couldn't access. Pamela was using Randall's county connections to strangle him financially, betting he'd break before she did. These people had turned property theft into a coordinated assault, legal delays, financial pressure, official intimidation. That thought burned in his gut. How many others had Pamela and Randall squeezed out? He called Des. I need you to dig into Randall's business. Permits, projects, everything public record. On it, Des said. But brother, you sure you want to keep fighting? These people play dirty. Garrett looked at the deed sitting on the motel nightstand. Helen's insurance money. 30 years of overtime. His future. I'm sure, he said. Beverly laid out the strategy over burnt coffee. We build a public record. Make this messy for them. She had Garrett file formal complaints with everyone who'd listen. State Real Estate Commission for Pamela's license. Conflict of interest when you're claiming ownership in your sales territory. County Ethics Board for Randall's inspector role while he's in a personal property dispute. State Attorney General requesting fraud investigation. It was bureaucratic warfare. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. Then Lanny Pritchard walked into his life. 60-something, former county clerk, retired but still sharp. She overheard Garrett on the phone with Beverly at the diner. Approached his booth like she had a secret to share. You're the guy fighting Pam Sutherland. Honey, sit down. I got stories. Turns out Pamela's family never owned that property. Her great-uncle had rented the A-frame back in the 80s, let it fall apart, got evicted for non-payment in 87. Pamela had been spinning this family legacy fairy tale for years. Lanny knew of 2 other foreclosures where Pamela tried similar stunts. Both settled quietly when the buyers paid her to disappear. It was a pattern, a business model. Buy low at auction, Pamela squats, claims generational ownership, buyer settles for pennies just to end the nightmare. Lanny took Garrett to the county archives. Pre-digital records stored in a basement that smelled like mold and old paper. Dusty filing cabinets held documents going back to 1964. They found the original 1972 deed showing the property sold to an out-of-state investor. No Sutherland anywhere on the chain of title. Then a rental agreement from 1983. Pamela's great-uncle as tenant, not owner. Lease terminated 1987 for non-payment. Black and white proof. Garrett took the evidence to Sheriff Hooper, feeling like he finally had ammunition. The sheriff looked at the documents with all the enthusiasm of a man watching paint dry. This doesn't change the civil matter, Mr. Hayes. Court still has to decide. You mean you won't enforce the law because Randall's your buddy? Garrett's voice was tight. Hooper's face hardened. Watch your tone. I'm trying to keep the peace in this county. That's when Garrett understood. Local law enforcement wasn't incompetent. It was compromised. The good old boy network wasn't a myth. It was infrastructure. 2 days later, Randall showed up at the motel. Not threatening, just condescending. Leaned against Garrett's truck like he owned that, too. Look, let's be reasonable. I'll buy the property from you. $80,000. You walk away clean. No more lawyers. Garrett's jaw clenched. I paid $87 plus legal fees, plus my time. $75 then. Final offer. Randall smiled, but his eyes were cold. Because if you fight this, I'll make sure every permit you ever need in this state gets buried in red tape. Get out, Garrett said. Beverly went on offense. She filed a motion to expedite the court date, arguing ongoing property damage from illegal construction. Attached photos of Randall's concrete addition, permits he never pulled, inspections he never scheduled. The judge, a visiting circuit judge, not one of Randall's buddies, granted partial relief. Ordered the Sutherlands to stop construction immediately, but didn't evict them yet. Court date moved up to 3 weeks. Small victory, but Garrett would take it. Then Beverly taught him a trick. Lease pendens, Latin for suit pending. It's a notice you file on a property title that screams legal dispute in progress to anyone who checks. Prevents sale or transfer until the case resolves. Garrett filed it immediately, blocking Pamela from flipping his property to some third party while they fought in court. Pamela's countermove was pure desperation wrapped in legal paperwork. She filed a restraining order against Garrett. Claimed he stalked her by driving past the property, his own property, said his emails through lawyers constituted harassment. Even tried to claim HOA violations and property disputes gave her standing. The local judge, probably golfing with Randall on weekends, granted a temporary order. Garrett couldn't come within 500 feet of his own house. The irony tasted like battery acid. Then the media hit. Local paper ran a story. Outsider buyer battles local family over mountain home. The slant was pure sympathy for Pamela. Local family fighting to save generational land from foreclosure vulture. Garrett, a retired electrician who'd saved 30 years for this, was painted as some Wall Street predator. The comment section turned vicious fast. But Des came through. Spent 2 days digging through county records, permit databases, business filings, found something beautiful. Randall's LLC had received $8,500 from the bank to secure and maintain the foreclosed property before auction. He was supposed to winterize it, lock it up, keep it safe. Instead, Randall had moved his family in while the property was still bank-owned, before the auction even happened. The private investigator Garrett hired found social media posts proving it. Pamela's daughter tagged at the cabin 4 months before Garrett's purchase. They'd been squatting in bank property, then just kept squatting when it sold. What if they planned this whole thing? Des said over the phone. Randall gets hired to secure it. Tells Pamela it's going to auction. They move in and wait for some sucker to buy it. Then claim adverse possession or force a settlement. Beverly's eyes lit up when Garrett showed her the evidence. She filed an amended complaint. Fraud, conspiracy, theft by deception. This wasn't a civil dispute anymore. This had criminal written all over it. Suddenly, Pamela's fancy Charleston lawyers withdrew from the case, citing ethical conflicts. Translation: they didn't want to be anywhere near potential criminal exposure. Randall got suspended from his county inspector job pending ethics investigation. Sheriff Hooper, with the state AG's office suddenly watching, had no choice but to open a real investigation. Beverly's paralegal found it on a Wednesday afternoon, buried in county archives like a landmine waiting 15 years to explode. A 2009 tax lien certificate misfiled in the wrong drawer, gathering dust. Pamela's great-uncle had owed $14,000 in back property taxes on a parcel of land. The county sold that tax lien to an investor. Great uncle lost the land. Standard procedure. But the legal description on that 2009 lien overlapped with Garrett's current property by 3 acres. Boundary survey had never been done. Beverly spread the documents across her desk like a winning poker hand. Garrett, Pamela's family did own land here once, but not this land. They owned an adjoining lot, lost it in a tax sale 16 years ago. She's been conflating 2 different properties, either because she's genuinely confused or because she's a damn good liar. Garrett paid $5,000 he didn't have for an emergency boundary survey. The surveyor spent 3 days on the mountain with GPS equipment and old plat maps. The results came back crystal clear. The cabin and 37 acres belonged to Garrett. Clean title going back to 1972. The 3-acre strip Pamela's family had actually owned. Wooded hillside lost in that 2009 tax sale, now owned by some out-of-state investment trust that probably didn't even know they had it. Pamela's generational land claim was for the wrong piece of dirt entirely. Beverly filed an emergency motion to compel, attaching the survey and historical records. The judge, still the visiting circuit judge, thank God, reviewed the evidence during a hearing that felt like watching an execution in slow motion. Pamela's new lawyer, an overworked public defender who clearly drew the short straw, tried to argue for more time to review. He held up a yellow folder marked HOA violation, claiming property disputes and neighborhood complaints. Beverly immediately countered with Garrett's property deed, clean and official. Your Honor, my clients need time to obtain their own survey, the lawyer pleaded. The judge cut him off, reading glasses perched on his nose. Counsel, your clients have 0 legal standing. The survey is definitive. Original deeds are definitive. These HOA claims are fabricated. Why are we still here? Your Honor, we request. Denied. Eviction order granted. Sheriff's Department will enforce in 48 hours. Pamela lost it. Full meltdown in the courtroom. Screaming, sobbing, had to be escorted out by bailiffs. This is my land. My family built this. You're all corrupt. Her voice echoed down the courthouse hallway. 2 hours later, his phone rang. Fire Marshal's office. Mr. Hayes, we received an anonymous tip about hazardous materials stored at your property address. We're required to inspect before any eviction can proceed. Garrett closed his eyes. How long will that delay things? Could be a few days, could be a week, depends what we find. Beverly's voice was tight when he called her. They're not stalling anymore, Garrett. They're setting a trap. Garrett scheduled the fire inspection for 6 a.m., 2 days out. Mara Chun, investigative reporter for the Charleston Gazette, would be there at 5:30 with a photographer. If the Sutherlands had staged evidence, it would be front-page news. If they hadn't, the eviction would happen by 8. Either way, the story was getting told. 5:30 a.m. Still dark, mountain fog so thick Garrett's headlights barely cut through it. He pulled up to the property with Beverly and Mara, their breath misting in the cold. Wood smoke curled from the cabin chimney. The Sutherlands were awake, waiting. Frost crunched under Garrett's boots as he stepped out. Mara's camera started clicking immediately, capturing everything. 6 a.m. sharp, the fire marshal arrived. County official, but professional, not one of Randall's poker buddies. Randall met him at the door, arms crossed. There's nothing hazardous here. Somebody filed a false report. The fire marshal didn't blink. Then you won't mind me looking. Randall blocked the doorway, 6-foot frame filling it. You need a warrant for this. For a hazmat emergency call? No, sir, I don't. Step aside or you'll be removed. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. When the marshal finally emerged, his expression was granite. Found 5 55-gallon drums in the basement, unmarked. Could be diesel. Could be industrial chemicals. I've never been in that basement, Garrett said loud enough for Mara's recorder to catch. I've never even been inside this house. The marshal inspected the drums closer, found serial numbers someone had tried to scrape off, but didn't quite finish. Ran them through his database right there on his phone. These drums are registered to Sutherland Construction, LLC. Reported as properly disposed 6 months ago. He looked at Randall. They're filled with used motor oil. Illegal storage, environmental hazard, and you just filed a false report about contamination you created yourself. You're looking at criminal charges and environmental fines up to $50,000. The marshal red-tagged the property on the spot. No one could occupy until professional remediation happened. Randall had just screwed himself, created the delay he wanted, but couldn't stay either. Pamela came flying out like a hornet from a kicked nest. This is a setup. He planted those. She pointed at Garrett, voice shrill enough to crack glass. Mara stepped forward, camera rolling. Ma'am, the serial numbers prove they're your husband's drums. Pamela realized she was being recorded and lunged for the camera. Actually lunged, hands out like claws. State police, already on scene for eviction support, intercepted her mid-charge. She fought them, screaming, twisting, had to be cuffed, arrested for assault and resisting. The photographer caught every second. With Pamela in the back of a cruiser, Randall stood alone on the porch. His shoulders sagged like someone had cut his strings. Please, he said, voice cracking. Give us one more day? The kids have school stuff inside. Toys, clothes. Garrett looked at Beverly. She shrugged. Your call. Every fiber in Garrett's body wanted to say no. But he thought about those kids, confused and scared. 2 hours, he said. Personal belongings only. Everything else stays for inventory. That's when Crystal, Pamela's daughter, snapped. She ran back inside and started destroying everything, smashing windows from the inside with a baseball bat, spray painting the walls. Thief, liar, burn in hell. Dripping red letters across the living room. State police rushed in, pulled her out, kicking and screaming. Second arrest of the morning. Garrett stepped inside his house for the first time as the legal owner. The smell hit him first. Decay, mildew, sewage. Human waste smeared on the bathroom walls, deliberate and vicious. Holes punched through drywall. Copper pipes ripped out, probably for scrap value. Broken glass everywhere, crunching under his boots. Cold November air whistling through shattered windows. Mara's story went live within 2 hours. County inspector arrested after squatting in foreclosed home. Photos of Randall in handcuffs. Crystal mid-vandalism. Those illegal oil drums lined up like evidence in a crime scene. Regional news picked it up by noon. By evening, Garrett's story was on Reddit's front page with 18,000 upvotes. The comment sections reversed completely. This man is a hero for exposing these crooks. Finally, someone fought back. The hazmat crew took 4 days and $12,000 to remove Randall's oil drums properly. Dez brought his Pittsburgh crew down that weekend. 5 guys with sledgehammers and contractor bags ready to gut the damaged interior. During demolition, they found hidden compartments built into the walls behind drywall. Inside, stolen property, power tools still with Home Depot price tags, spools of copper wire, boxes of imported tile. Randall had been using Garrett's house as a warehouse for stuff he'd lifted from job sites. State police opened yet another investigation. Victims started coming forward. Randall's charges piled up like firewood. Theft, fraud, environmental crimes, filing false reports, now grand larceny. 3 months after the eviction, Garrett hosted an open house. Sent invitations to the entire county. Wanted transparency, wanted people to see what he'd actually built. Sunny Saturday in February, barbecue smoking on the lawn, cabin doors wide open for tours. 200 people showed up. Locals, veterans, reporters, curious neighbors who'd only heard rumors. Garrett stood on his rebuilt porch, new railings, fresh stain, solid, and gave a speech. I didn't come here to steal anything, he said, voice steady. I came to build something. And despite everything, I still want to be part of this community. The crowd was listening. Actually listening. Then a car screeched into the driveway. Pamela, uninvited and unhinged. She stumbled out, mascara already streaking, smell of vodka at 11 a.m., liar. Thief, she screamed across the lawn. This is my family's land. Every phone came out. 200 people filming simultaneously. She tried to rush Garrett. The vets formed a human wall, gently restraining her without force. She thrashed anyway, sobbing, barely coherent. Garrett took the microphone, voice calm as Sunday morning. Pamela, I'm sorry for what you've lost, but you didn't lose it to me. You lost it to your own choices. He pulled out a poster board Des had prepared. Timeline of the Sutherland family lies backed by county records. 1972, property sold to an investor. No Sutherland on the deed. 1983, your great-uncle rented, didn't own. 1987, evicted for non-payment. 2009, different parcel lost to tax sale. 2024, you and Randall squat in my legally purchased home. Each point documented, undeniable. The crowd murmured. Even the locals who'd believed Pamela's story realized how deep the deception ran. 1 month later, Randall was sentenced to 8 years federal prison. Fraud, environmental crimes, cyber crimes, theft. The judge wasn't sympathetic. Pamela got 3 years probation, $50,000 in restitution to Garrett, mandatory mental health treatment. Crystal completed her restitution payments over 2 years, rebuilding her life with Garrett as an unexpected mentor. The county inspector position got reformed, outside oversight, term limits, ethics review board. Garrett had accidentally fixed a broken system. Garrett's monthly legal clinics drew 20 to 30 people every session. Folks fighting HOA overreach, boundary disputes, title fraud. He partnered with Beverly to create the Mountain Property Rights Handbook, a free PDF that got downloaded over 50,000 times in 6 months. State legislators introduced the Hayes Act, requiring 72-hour eviction for proven squatters with fraudulent claims. County ethics reforms passed. No official could hold dual roles in personal legal disputes anymore. The Real Estate Commission created a task force on agent conflicts of interest. National media coverage inspired similar legal fights in 12 other states. One man's stubborn fight had sparked a movement. Garrett scattered Helen's ashes on the property that spring, finally feeling settled. The Veterans Group established a permanent property defense fund, helping vulnerable owners fight legal battles. The annual Mountain Justice Barbecue at Garrett's place became tradition. 300 people last year celebrating community over corruption. Garrett started a YouTube channel called Blue Collar Property Rights. Teaches title searches, deed verification, squatter prevention, legal self-defense. His key lesson: always do in-person inspection before buying. Always hire a local attorney. Always document everything. The channel hit 500,000 subscribers. One evening, alone on his porch, Garrett looked at his cabin, lights glowing warm, smoke curling from the chimney. Thought of Helen. We did it, babe. Different than we planned, but we did it. For the first time in years, he felt peace. So here's the deal. If you've dealt with HOA nightmares, corrupt neighbors, or property theft, drop your story in the comments. Your experience might help someone else facing the same fight. And subscribe, because every week we're bringing you stories of ordinary people fighting back against broken systems and winning. The cabin still stands on that mountain ridge. Smoke rising into clean air. Proof that sometimes the good guys actually win.